Well, I wanted to screen record my Triple E framework results. I actually went on the website and did the rubric electronically. So I filled out each question as unbiased and objectively as possible, and I scored a 16 out of 18, which gave me a percentage of 88.9%. Um, when looking at this information, I think the two areas I did best in was engagement and enhancement. And for engagement, the first question, it says, does the technology tool help students focus on the learning goals, the content with less distraction? And I absolutely believe this is true because my students, even though they're diverse learners, and majority of them either read 3 to even 5 grades below, as well as their writing is pretty low as well, extremely low. They were really engaged and they really tried their hardest to produce quality work. Um, and then does the technology tool help to motivate students to begin the learning process? And it was so funny because there was a moment when we didn't have time to finish the book that day, and they would just keep asking me like, when are we going to finish our books? And you can just really tell that they enjoyed um, creating that book. And then lastly, engagement question 3 says, does the technology cause a shift in behavior of the students where they move from passive to active social learners, co-use? And they absolutely did. They really went from, when they were first kind of writing the assignment on their Venn diagram and just using also a graphic organizer to help them formulate their narrative piece. They had a hard time doing the writing portion, and there was a lot of scaffolding there. But once we went on to Book Creator, they were so engaged. They wanted to create the books, and they were having so much more fun than when they were writing, because a lot of them, have a hard time spelling or just trying to create these sentences in their mind and on paper, that they just felt like it was easier to do it online. Now, for enhancement, I thought, um, honestly, I think this was the biggest improvement in the lesson. So, the lesson plan originally didn't have the book creator as the end project. They were just going to write on paper and pencil, and I decided to shift that and to do their narrative pieces online. And question number 1 for enhancement says, does the technology tool aid students in developing or demonstrating a more sophisticated understanding of the content? And it really did. It helped students really just go dig deeper so that their work can look awesome in a way that, for them who they can be struggling readers and writers, it really just went beyond. So hopefully you could look in the library and see for yourself. If it was just paper and pencil, it would have not looked as, creative, and they were just so much more proud of their work. And then this leads me to question 2 for enhancement, which, does the technology create scaffold to make it easier to understand concepts or ideas? And it absolutely did, because it just really helped them to, find pictures online and just make up a story, and give them even more ideas to write about. And they wrote even more because of it. So it was awesome. And then lastly, for enhancement, question 3, does the technology create paths for students to demonstrate their understanding of the learning goals in a way that they could not do with traditional tools? And I truly 100% believe it did. They remembered the learning objective more because they knew they wanted to create this book like if it was a real book. So they wanted it to be like their best work. Lastly, the I believe this was the area that wasn't the best in terms of my lesson plan, which was the extension piece. And question one says, does the technology create opportunities for students to learn outside of their typical school day? And I 100% agree that it did give them opportunity to learn even more so they can take this outside of school and, create even more things online if they had the opportunity to do that. But questions 2 and 3, I put somewhat. I didn't put absolutely because for number 2 it says that does the technology create a bridge between school learning and their everyday life experiences? This was somewhat because I didn't know if it truly bridged a gap between everyday life experience in a absolutely way. It did somewhat in terms of like they do in their everyday life go on to video games. They do create videos and audio and stuff like that. But I think other than that, it's not like a everyday life experience. As well as number question 3 for extension says, does the technology allow students to build skills that they can use in their everyday life? So before is did they learn something and now is can they use it for their everyday life? I put somewhat because some of these skills they can absolutely use it, but I was like, well, would they always use 100% of this book? Like, is this something every day that they will be using, like creating a book? Well, no. So I feel like the next time, I think, overall, like it was such a great tool, and I'm so glad I did it because I, it was 16 out of 18. So if I looked at the results, it's still in the green light, and it means that it was a very strong lesson plan, and it really hit majority of all the framework. Um, it would just for me, I think the area that I lacked in, and hopefully moving forward can get better at, is the area of how is this extending where they can actually use these things in their everyday life. And it's something to think about even more for me. So I hope my reflection makes sense and that you enjoyed it.